there's ADHD, so attention deficit hyperactivity, the child is hyperactive,
Right.
and there's ADD, attention deficit, which means that if the child is given a Lego, they can focus for hours, but homework is really difficult because it's a non-preferred activity.
Okay.
And these are two different areas of the brain.
And
So we try to kind of
all these tests.
I retired, and obviously, but thankfully,
All right, Dr. Haneen Jarrar, child psychologist, is with me in the studio. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
I love that you're with us in the studio, and I love that we're going to talk about today's topic, which is attention disorders in both children and adults, because I feel like I've seen more and more adults, getting diagnosed with ADHD or other, attention deficiency disorders or deficit disorders, sorry. And I feel like it's one worth mentioning because there could be a fix to it that is long-term and that is beneficial to the individual. It's just a lot of people are unaware of these fixes. But before we get started, I want to get to know you first. Tell us about yourself and tell us about how you got into this field, what you do, who you work with, that kind of thing.
So I always loved kids. I'm a firstborn, so I was very naturally loving taking care of children, and being in that role was very natural for me. I wanted to be a pediatrician.
Oh.
I loved spending time in the OR with my uncle. So I would spend summers in the OR with my uncle.
Okay.
One summer, they had a visiting pediatric heart surgeon. And after the heart surgery, I was spending so much time with the individuals post-operation, like talking to them and telling them how they feel. And this specific heart surgeon looked at me and said, if you ever want to get into medicine, you can't be that involved. Maybe psychology is more your thing. I was like, psychology? No. He's like, you're so interested in how people felt after the operation more than the operation itself. And so that stuck in my mind. I went into med school, but I was finding med school really challenging. It was so boring, long hours. You can't have a social life. You're stuck in the library. Right. I hated chemistry. I failed chemistry miserably. And children being my area of interest and my love and my passion, I became more and more specialized in the area of children and early development. So I don't see children beyond 13 years of age. Okay. My area of interest is that early developmental milestones and early years and the psychology in these very early years up to the age of 13 when the teenage brain pops in.
Oh, yeah, which is a whole, it's a different ball game. Yeah, we're not going to even get into that. But yeah, I agree. Those foundation years are critical. And there isn't, I have never met a psychologist who has not said that these years determine how an individual turns out. And again, we always hear the saying of children are sponges, and it's those years that matter the most. And I love that you work with that specific age or that age group because it's what makes a person, and I think it's crucial. And I think with assistance, kids can actually turn their lives around, and they can actually beat all the odds that were told to them at a young age. It's funny that you mentioned that you wanted to become a pediatrician because I wanted to become a pediatrician as well. I love kids, but then when I knew that, there's a lot of it's graphic. It's a graphic field, and the fact that with the blood, the surgeries, I can't tolerate that. So I was like, okay, I'm out. I'm just gonna do
that. Never bothered me. The long library hours.
Well, that's what bothered you.
That,
okay.
I can't.
Okay.
I don't mind blood.
Okay.
I don't mind an open heart. A child with an open heart didn't bother me, but the long hours in the library with no social life and that I couldn't do that. And chemistry. The chemistry I couldn't do.
Yeah.
So my advisor was like, if you can't do chemistry, you can't do med school.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
It's
Pharmacy
all,
and med school.
exactly.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
Absolutely. My parents and my whole family all come from a medical background. And to me, I was like, good for you guys. It's not for me. I'll spread the knowledge. I'll bring in guests, talk to them about it. They'll share their knowledge, and I will just sit here. You said you work with kids, and the topic that we're discussing today is attention deficit or hyperactive disorders. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So I don't really like to use the term disorder because that insinuates there's something wrong with you.
Right.
And I never like to break that to a child or a teenager ever.
Okay.
I'm here to tell you that there's something wrong with you and I'm here to fix you. I don't like that because we're all very different and human brains are developed in a really different way. So when you're neurodivergent, it just means that your brain is really good at some things, but might find some things really difficult. And if these things that your brain finds difficult get in the way of life, we are here to support you and give you coping mechanisms just so you can function in this society that's not really built for everybody.
Right.
And it's society's fault. Society should be more inclusive. Jobs should be more inclusive for people who have neurodivergent brains. So this is how I like to talk about it. Not really as a disorder that needs to be fixed, but a type of a different brain that is also very unique. Most of the people the scientists, the people that have gotten us to the moon are actually people who were neurodivergent. So if we isolate them from society and say disorder, what are we left with, really?
Right.
So what happens is the human brain, when it's born, when a baby is born, the brain is not fully developed. It's actually a third of its actual size. The frontal lobe, which is a very important area of our brain, is one of the areas that is very underdeveloped in babies. So if you think about it, a baby can do what? Can cry, poop, sleep, that's it. Can't speak, can't stand, can't do anything. As the years go by, the frontal lobe develops. So the baby starts talking, walking, and then around the age of 6, we start developing something called executive function skills. What are those skills? Time management, impulsivity control, managing to hyper focus on non-preferred activity, ability to empathize with others, social skills, ability to regulate my emotions. These are called executive function skills. You're not born with these skills. You develop these skills with time. So what happens with kids with ADHD is that at this threshold, the 6 to 7, that's why we say wait till 6, because before that, the frontal lobe is not developed. We start noticing that, wait a minute, the child's 7, everyone in the classroom can focus on non-preferred activities, but the child cannot focus as long. The child is hyperactive. Their body cannot sit still for long periods of time. The child cannot manage their time. So if you say, John, go upstairs and get dressed and come down, John will get lost upstairs.
Right.
The child cannot regulate their emotions. So they still might have tantrums at the age of 7. The child might have difficulties in social cues or social understanding or ability to withstand losing a game, for example, you know. And so as a result, the child will start feeling that there's something off. I'm being told off a lot. I'm getting a lot of comments, a lot of feedback on my behavior. So there's self-esteem issues that start developing, anxiety, social anxiety about social situations because I'm always late or extreme or too emotional or under-emotional or missing social cues or so social anxiety might start.
How do you know that your child is just being active or if they actually have an issue?
I usually ask... there are 3 areas of functioning that I look into. Social life, home life, and school life. Is this level of activity affecting any of those? Is she so active that she's getting so told off at school? Or is she so active that it's okay? Is she so active that at home she's being told off, she can't sit, she can't eat, it's affecting her functioning? Or is she getting by? Is she so active like in social life, in birthday parties, when everybody's singing and sitting together and she's off on the trampoline? Or is she getting... So if this difficulty is affecting functioning, that's when I get concerned. If it's not, then the child is able to cope.
Okay. And what are the different types of... I don't want to say disorder anymore.
It's okay. You can say whatever you want.
So like these attention
difficulties,
tampering or difficulties.
So because the thing is, the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, that we didn't write. that's a whole other topic of who writes these things
Okay.
and how they get affected. We as clinicians, we have to go by those rules.
Right.
So you didn't come up with this ADHD.
Yeah,
This is so we can understand what we're talking about. So according to the DSM, there's ADHD, so attention deficit hyperactivity. The child is hyperactive,
Right.
and there's ADD, attention deficit. So it's just there's no hyperactivity, but there's a real difficulty on focusing on non-preferred activity, which means that if the child is given a Lego, they can focus for hours, but homework is really difficult because it's a non-preferred activity.
Okay.
And these are two different areas of the brain. So that's why we look at non-preferred activities.
Okay, so there are two types. It's the ADHD and the ADD. There was a time when, studies came out and they said, oh, they're essentially the same thing. This was just an old terminology. Is that even true?
They are, because there's a lot of overlap.
Okay.
But for ease of therapy, because usually what happens after assessments is that you get therapy, you get intervention.
Right.
Because these things can change. So if the child is so hyperactive that they can't sit and focus, there are therapies put in place to help to grow the frontal lobe so that this child can sit and focus better.
Okay.
So with therapy, it's easier to make this. What are we working on? Are we working on hyperactivity or focus? Are there sensory issues? Are there social skills difficulties? And that's how you then plan the therapy for the child moving forward, usually with the school as well.
Okay. Is there a reason at a young age that the frontal lobe hasn't developed? Like, are there any factors?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
So as humans, from research, what are the things that develop the frontal lobe? Number one, time in nature. So we know from research that the kids that spend more time in nature have a more developed frontal lobe than the kids that don't. Active play and undirected play. So the kids that have more undirected play in their day have a better frontal lobe. What does undirected play mean? You just play whatever you want.
Okay.
Screen time.
Oh, absolutely.
The more screen time your child gets, the smaller the frontal lobe is going to be, because it's the opposite of what the frontal lobe needs to develop. Because the frontal lobe needs to develop frustration tolerance. With games, you get frustrated, you go to the next level.
Right.
The frontal lobe needs to develop impulsivity control. With games, it's not there. The frontal lobe needs activities to develop focus and concentration. With games, everything is so fast. And so if you have a child neurodivergent, zero screen time, because this is the opposite of what develops a frontal lobe.
Right.
And then we have lots of social interaction, like real social interaction. Sunlight, time in sunlight, and moving the body.
Okay.
If you look at these 6 factors and you look at how our modern world is designed, you will see that more and more children are spending less time in nature, less time outside, less time with, friends.
So do we have any stats on how many kids, like the percentage of kids that are affected by ADHD or ADD, sorry?
1 in every 3 boys. This is the stats from the U.S. I don't know if there are any stats here in the UAE.
Okay.
Is diagnosed with some form of either, we call them neurodevelopmental disorders.
Right.
Either ADHD or autism spectrum disorder. And 1 in every 4 to 5 girls. So statistics are high.
Wow.
Yeah. And I feel like after Corona and after all of these different factors have come into play, it's even higher as well.
So we know that with kids that, might have these difficulties, we seek help. But what can a parent do in these situations? And then the follow-up is, what can teachers do as well in the classroom when they know that they have a kid, with these difficulties and that might not, have the neurological, functions that another child might have?
Yeah. So I always say understanding, scaffolding, and praise. So what does understanding stand? Like, I understand that my child's not doing this to tick me off. They can't. It's not that they won't, it's they can't. So when you get that as a parent, your whole perception to something shifts. Okay, so if I'm asking him repeatedly to put his shoes on or to get ready in the morning and he's not, what can I do as a parent to help him or her? That's the second one, scaffolding. What does scaffolding mean? It's a term that teachers use a lot. If your child is here, this is their level, and if they're level 1 and you want to get them to level 3, you got to build a kind of a staircase for them at 1.5, 1.75, 2, 2.5 until they reach 3. Right. If you keep expecting a 3, come on, come to me at a 3, and they're at a 1, and they can't get to you, and they keep failing. It's our role to build this bridge for them, slowly but surely. So if your child can put their shoes on but can't tie their shoelaces, or if your child can get upstairs but can't seem to start the activity, then there's a lot of things that you can do as a parent to help them get there. Right. We use lots of visuals with anyone who has difficulties in focus, planning, and organization. And even adults with ADHD, you will find that they need to put a lot of timers, a lot of reminders to get them to do, and they're fine with it. Like, right. Yeah, I have ADHD. I need like 5 timers to remind me, because there's part of your brain that says, come on, Maria, get up. You have an interview. You have to go. It's going to take you half an hour to get there. That means you have to start at 2:30. That means you have to end your clinic at 2. Yeah. That part is underactive. It's there, but it doesn't fire as much as it should be. So we rely on technology. Right, of course. It's helpful for some things.
Exactly.
And lots of visuals for kids. So visual schedules, reminders, so that parents can save their voices. Same as teachers. I give the same advice to teachers. Save your voice. Because you don't want to be, John, come on. John, what did I tell you? Why are you always making mistakes? There are other tools that you can use to help you get the child where they need to be, like timers, reminders, visual schedules, social stories we use a lot. For this week, we want to work on brushing teeth. That's all I want to do with you. I don't want to focus on anything else. Pick something that is easy and start from there, and then go to something difficult, slowly but surely. And the last thing is praise. So you do all the work as a parent. You do the scaffolding, the planning. Okay, what can I work? Where can I start? And then you praise them heavily when they achieve something.
Yes.
Okay? And you have to get support, though. It's hard to be able to do all this by yourself. So it's always the therapy team is there to help.
Yeah. I love the point of praise, because I feel like a lot of kids with ADHD or ADD feel like they're underachieving as is. So it's reassuring to them as well.
Oh, yeah. Self-esteem really takes a blow in these cases. Yeah. Because if you think, I always look at the frequency of correction versus praise. So how many times am I correcting my child in the day versus how many times is my child successful? It's not because you're a bad parent. It's because the child has difficulties in executive function skills. But the child doesn't know that. And all he hears is, I'm failing my mom, I'm failing my teacher again and again. And the self-esteem will take a blow. And sometimes what we have is the vicious cycle of oppositional defiance. So because the ego is only receiving negative comments and feeling like it's failing all the time, it starts saying, hey, I must be a failure. I'm not doing anything right. I'm not getting my parent attention for anything good. So what's the fastest thing to get my parents' attention? What can I do? I know, misbehave. Because misbehavior gets parents' attention really quickly. So you start having a cycle of the only way to get attention is misbehavior. And this is reinforced by my core belief is John is not good enough in things like math and homework. You know what I'm good at, though? Misbehavior. So I'm going to be known as the naughty child, as the clown, as the person who makes jokes, because that's what I'm good at. I'm good at making mistakes, apparently. So we get a lot of cases like they're 12, they're older, and they've just, since 7, they've just learned that from school because they always get corrected. They're always in timeout. They're always out, excluded. This heavily kind of consequence-based way of phrasing will end up with your child feeling like the only way I can get recognition if I'm the bad boy.
Of course.
And you get that. And you will find that when you dig deeper, this child has a real difficulty in executive function skills. They can't focus. So they found a way out because they have to be known for something. They can't be known for being losers. They want to be known for the bad guy, or they're sportive, so they become heavily invested in sports and being the clown of the class, for example. You know, so that's another comorbid issue is what we call oppositional defiance. Again, it's coined as a disorder, but yeah, we sometimes see it as a comorbid issue,
like the rebelling side of it.
Yeah.